So far, I told you extremism, the different types of it, what are the reasons behind it. And in that, again, we saw with regard to Naxalism how things have evolved. We briefly saw the geographical reasons for it, how a region's richness in terms of forest produce or in terms of metallic minerals or non-metallic minerals can also be a bane because it has led to Naxalism. But these are again very general, correct? We understood the geographical reason, agreed, exploitation have happened. But how? How did this exploitation actually evolve? Or how did this lack of governance or misgovernance occur? We need to understand that in detail. And for that, we have what? The factors applicable to India that led to the spread of extremism. Which are those factors? Imposition of laws, land laws and encroachment of land, economic issues, social issues, political issues, government deficit, trijunction theory. These are the 7 factors that we will be dealing with now, little in detail. All right. So here goes. So the very first factor when we take imposition of laws, imposing development models on tribals like big hydro projects. Like I told you, tribal people actually lead very sustainable form of lifestyle. They are not those people who will actually crave for more or are actually greedy. They actually lead a lifestyle which is very sustainable. That is, work hard for today, earn your food, enjoy your food, sleep peacefully. It is as simple as that. It is not about dowry has to be arranged for the daughter, or if a girl child is born, then it is a curse. They don't have any such barbaric thoughts in their mindset. And they respect women. Their lifestyle itself, if you see, they respect and they worship women. Clear? So, into those tribals, when you say big hydropower projects has to be implemented here, please vacate this place, go and stay somewhere else, they are never going to understand the logic of it. For people who lead simple life, they'll actually ask, why should you trap the water? Let it flow. Let it flow its natural course. That is the way nature has created it. Why do you want to trap it in a big tank? Neither the government will be able to explain, nor will the tribal people be able to understand. Land alienation of tribals. Tribal people, let us say, who are used to shifting cultivation, you ask them, settle down, start doing normal, settled cultivation. Will they be able to do it? They are used to a particular lifestyle which had evolved over the years. It is older than the constitution of our country. Centuries old. Probably even older than Harappan civilization. But that culture or that practice is being asked of them to let go of. And they are put in a different land, telling them that, see, we will give you cows. Take care of these cows. We will give you goat. Take care of these goats. How are they going to do it? Mining laws. The mining laws which actually allows any private company to go and explore, or once they get a mining lease or a mining contract, how they go and explore and they mine indiscriminately, leading to what? Leading to destruction of ecology, which is again closely associated with what? The tribal lifestyle. Same thing applies for power production, because when power production, when we talk about, understand, we are talking about what? Coal mining. Then comes various acts, the Forest Act of 1927, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 were used to target tribals who depended on forest produce for their living. For this, we have to partly thank the Britishers also, because Britishers brought in this policy of reserved forest, which forbade the tribals from entering the forest to collect forest produce, to collect materials for mining, or to collect timber, firewood. So none of these were entertained, and basically when we received independence, some of these laws were continued as it is. And what was the end result? Years of violation of basic rights that were entitled. That was the right of the tribal people. Getting the picture here? So this is how it evolved. So understood about imposition of laws, how imposition of laws actually led to disenchantment with the government. That doesn't end there. Because the next reason, if you see, it is what? It is associated with land loss and encroachment of land. So Land Ceiling Act was brought in by the government back in the 50s to deal with what? To deal with the fact that nobody should hold, like from state to state it used to vary, but ballpark figure if one were to ask, 20 to 25 acre. More than 20 to 25 acre, a single individual citizen should not be owning. This was the rule. But how many states effectively implemented it? How many states saw to it that the land is truly redistributed? And when this Land Ceiling Act was not being implemented properly, who had to suffer the most? The tribals again. Because when Land Ceiling Acts were not being implemented on time, what it led to is that it actually led to encroachment of community lands where tribals were living together as a community. Now, why was it that always the tribals were targeted? Like I told you, the tribal way of life is far different from the democratic setup what we have here. In fact, tribal way of life is more democratic and truly participatory compared to the democracy what we are following. Because obviously, tribal communities are very close-knit and they are very tight. They take into the opinion, they listen to the opinion of each and every member. Whereas for the 143 crore population what we have, we cannot literally go around taking everybody's opinion. So the small size gives it the strength, makes them truly democratic. But then, what happens here? Because they live together, anybody develops a problem, it becomes everybody's problem. And if everybody is harmed because of lack of implementation or lack of governance or a governance deficit, the entire close-knitness of the tribal group will come together and will start working against the state. Getting the idea? Disruption of old age tribal forest relationship. Like I told you, tribal people are actually the caretakers of forests. They, whatever resources they take from the forest too, they do it so sustainably. They don't actually exploit the forest. They take only what is needed for today. Because all said and done, let us admit one fact, tribal people are not greedy. They only take what is needed for today. They are not worried about tomorrow. That is why if you actually meet tribal people, you'll be surprised and you will actually start feeling a little jealous of them. You know why? They're truly happy in their life. And you will actually start wondering, with all the modern gadgets, whatever you're having, from a smartphone to a smartwatch to AirPods to that to this, you're still not happy in your life. Whereas a tribal person, probably having very little clothes to wear, but they are happy. This is the reason. Work today, work very hard, get your food, eat well, sleep well. That's it. And that is the reason why their form of hunting or their form of food gathering, their form of forest firewood collection, all of these are ultimately what? Sustainable. Why? Because they are not exploiting the resources for profit making. They are only using it for their consumption. They are not going to sell it to the market. Profit motive is not there. Economic transaction is not there. Automatically what happens? Sustainable development. Non-regularization of traditional land rights. So, tribal people, do they have any document to show that this land belongs to them? They don't have. Because government officers ask for document. Show that you are a tribal person. Show your document. Show your 10th standard certificate. Show your father's 10th standard certificate. None of them would have gone to school. But they are far more knowledgeable than probably an individual who has got education, formal education. Who told you this is your land? My great-grandfather onwards, everybody has lived here. That is not a valid reason, the government says, or the government officers say. So this actually leads to what? This actually leads to them thinking, who are these people to question me? I have been living here, my family, my generation after generation, we have been staying here. Who are these people to question me? Getting the picture here. Formally, whatever we think is important, Aadhaar card is important, 10th standard certificate is important, birth certificate is important. These are important documents for us, because we know that anything we need in the future from the side of the government, we need to produce these documents. For a tribal person, which document do they need to go to the forest to collect honey? Which document do they need to collect the firewood from the forest? Nothing. So why will they even need it? And therefore, why, if they don't need it, why will they even keep it, or why will they even bother to generate one? Getting the idea? But then, as you can clearly see, this automatically creates friction between the government and the tribal people. Because from the side of the government, if you are the IAS officer who are in charge of that district there, and this district largely is a forested area, tribal people are claiming rights to the land, you will also ultimately look into what? Document. Where is the paper? Because if you have to write a report, you will definitely be looking into the evidence. When you don't have that, then what will you rely upon? Getting the idea? Nobody is to be blamed here. It is a total difference in the way of life. Clear? Moving on. Land acquisition without appropriate compensation and rehabilitation, which we have already seen. Jal, jungle, jameen. Jal as in water, jungle as in forest, jameen as in land. Ideally, if water, forest and land, if any one of this gets affected, tribal people will definitely get angry with the government. And if all the three are affected, it is bound to lead to extremism. In this scenario again, we are talking about rehabilitation, correct? So when rehabilitation, if you are doing, all the three should be available then. Land you can provide, water you can provide. You have taken them out of the forest saying that you want to do mining there, you want to do, cut down the trees there because you need the wood, all of that. Agreed. You gave them rehabilitation. Fine. Land is there, water availability is there. Where is the forest? And when this is missing from the link, automatically what will that lead to? Disenchantment with the government. So clear with this? Moving on to the next issue, which is economic issues. So when economic issues, when we say, what are the major highlights here? Underdevelopment in the Naxal affected regions. So both the ways this can go. Already historically you have neglected them now, and you continue to neglect them. You want to do developmental activity there, but then whenever you construct a tower, Naxals come, they use improved explosive device and they blow up the tower. They are like, we don't want the tower. You try to construct road there, Naxals come and they break the road because like, we don't want your roads. Getting the idea? Skewed distribution of land and economic growth. That is, what happens is now you decide to discard the Naxal affected region. You are like, okay, don't want. There is already red corridor there. We are not going to create any development there. But when you do that decision, when you take that decision, what is the other drawback then? Again, the distance between the haves and the have-nots is increasing. So further and further alienation it will create. Encroachment of forest land by wealth-controlled contractor politician nexus. So I told you, wealth-controlled contractor politician, and even into that mix you can enter whom? The contractor, or rather the businessman, the politician and the bureaucrat. This unholy trinity will actually create what? Will actually create further alienation. Understand this, when I say bureaucrat, it not necessarily means IAS officers alone. It actually can be a CRPF Jawan too, a CRPF assistant commandant, an IPS officer who has just got central deputation to CRPF for just 3 years. It simply means any symbol of government. So IAS officer, IPS officer, CRPF officers, they are all seen as what? Representatives of the government, and therefore they are prone to be attacked. They will take the first brunt of the tribal anger. Getting the picture? Contractors, or when we talk about businessmen, they are more or less safe, because obviously it is not that if, say for example, Vedanta wanted to come to Niyamgiri Hills for mining operations, But it is not that the Vedanta's actual owner came down and sat and talked with the CEO. No, it will mostly to do with what somebody from the HR or somebody from the management side would have come and did the talking. Correct? So that is where the contractors escape the brunt. But otherwise, who are the first line of people who takes the rat from the tribals? The representatives of the government, comprising of CRPF officials, the IAS officers, the IPS officers, the talukdars, the tahsildars, etc. Clear, people? Moving on. Entry of mining companies into tribal lands and forests posing threat to the livelihood of the tribals, which I already told you with the example of Vedanta. Now, Vedanta was driven out of Niyamgiri Hills thanks to the tribal people or the Gram Sabhas there, which gave paramount importance to the rights of the tribals rather than developmental concerns. Indigenous tribal population deprived of their land and uprooted from the traditional land. So that is where, again, like I mentioned it to you, from the traditional land, when you take them out, what happens is the livelihood, the way of life, all of these are affected. Getting the picture? The livelihood and the way of life, all of these get affected, as a result of which, once again, anger increases against the government. Clear, people? Moving on. Now that we are done with economic issues, let us look into the social issues that has actually led to what? Naxalism. Social fragmentation. See, social fragmentation, when we talk about, we must understand it is born out of prejudice and stereotyping. So see, like I told you, tribal people, if you have interacted with them, it will actually burst a lot of myth that is associated with tribals, at least in the mainstream media, in which I include both print media as well as visual media, as well as the negative perceptions that would have been taught to us by the so-called educated society. And this actually leads to stereotyping and prejudice, and even, tribal people are addressed using very derogatory terms. This actually creates what? Distrust and ill will, which again further alienates them from mixing or interacting with people who are following a different culture or different cultural practice, or people who are totally different from a tribal way of life, like you and me. And this leads to what? A perception of exclusion, that they are different. And this they are different, till there it is okay. But this feeling of indifference, if it increases, it will go to a point where this country is also not mine. This government is not mine. My area, my territory is this forest. Anybody who comes to this forest to take this forest away from me or to throw me out of this forest, I will see to it that they are neutralized. This is what ends up happening. Protection of cultural identity. So like I told you, culture is intricately linked with any man. Any man. So the moment you threaten that culture, moment you question that culture, everything goes for a toss. Marginalization in some segments of the society, which is again a result of what? Stereotyping and prejudice. Violation of human rights. Now, a couple of years ago, I don't know how many of you would have seen that newspaper photo. In Andaman and Nicobar Islands, we have the Jarawa tribe. And there was this photo where a tourist bus was going along the road, and a Jarawa tribe lady stepped outside, and somebody offered the lady an orange or a fruit, according to the photograph I'm telling you, photographic image. Now, till there, it was okay. Okay, you're offering food. So far, so good. But somebody actually took a photo, and that was posted. Now, the problem here was that the Jarawa tribe ladies are more often than not semi-naked. It is their culture. In the name of modernism, in the name of development, when photos of these very primitive tribal people are taken and splashed across the internet, what are we doing? Aren't we violating their fundamental right and their right to privacy? Getting my point here? So much so that finally Supreme Court had to demarcate an area within Andaman and Nicobar Islands where no tourism activity, nothing will be allowed. Why? To protect the way of life of the tribal people there. So, Violation of human rights, this is the most basic example that I can tell you. The other thing, innocent. Why did I write this word here? One thing what you will observe while you are interacting with tribal people is they are very, very innocent and down to earth. Literally, if you want to meet people who are having a clean heart, tribal people is your best bet. So what happens here is the children, the women, they are easily exploited. Give them a few things which are of no value to you. Just give them a few things and they will give you their life. So the exploitation what then they are subjugated to can be of any form. They can be subjugated to what? Physically, they are exploited in the form of labor. The children are exploited either as child laborers. Women are exploited sexually. All these gross violations happen, and sadly enough, most of the tribal people speak their own indigenous language, which is not comprehensible or cannot be understood by most of the people in the country. As a result of which, what happens? Any police complaint, any justice that they need, it evades them. Because you need to go to a police station for this purpose. You need to put up an FIR for this purpose. Then you need to go and be present in front of a CJM, Chief Judicial Magistrate. But who will go for all of that? Who will make the tribal people understand that there is a procedure to this or a process to this? Or who will make the judiciary or the cops understand that violation of rights have happened here, exploitation have happened here? As a result of this, what will end up happening? Tribal people will end up taking matters into their own hand, because where they feel the law is being insufficient or being incapable of giving them justice, then they will prefer what? Retribution through their own means. Getting the idea? This is what ends up happening. As you can clearly see, most of these issues, whatever we have told here, they are actually what? Normal social issues that could have developed in any part of this country. Any part of this country, any developmental project, some people will have to leave their home, they'll have to settle somewhere. But tribal people's lifestyle is so different from the lifestyle what we all follow, as a result of which they are affected more economically, socially, psychologically, politically. And ultimately what it leads to is a total disenchantment or disillusionment with the government. Clear? Moving on. Absence of dignity of life, discontent against the government, increasing communal divide, disconnect with mainstream society. These are the other points. But if you look into it, these are the same points what I've been telling you till now. Because the usage of derogatory words, their dignity is questioned. Discontent against government because what the tribal people want to express and what the government is trying to do, both these languages are totally different. Increasing communal divide. Why communal divide? Like I told you, they are forest god, they are river god, they are mountain god, they are hill god. All these are threatened because of our developmental activities, and that leads to what? Complete alienation with regard to religious belief. Discontent with the mainstream society because they feel the mainstream society are only here to cheat them, harm them, abuse them. And as long as this thought process exists, they wouldn't want to what? Interact with anybody who is a non-tribal. They will try to seclude themselves further and further. Clear? Moving on. So economic issues, social issues, we saw. Now let us see political issues. Under political issues, the first and foremost reason is the lack of human rights. Like I told you, tribal people have been taken for granted for years together. And foremost blame we can definitely give it to the British. Because Britishers, simply because they were not able to understand the tribal way of life, they actually categorized a few tribes as what? Criminal tribes. Which itself is what? Classic case of gross human right violation. And this continued even further. Now, why did tribal people started doing stealing or killing or miming? Because their way of life was threatened. How else are they going to survive? Clear. And modern days we saw different sets of people or different sets of government taking them for granted, because tribal people were never a pressure group. What do you mean by a pressure group? Pressure group means a group either by ideology or by a thought process or by a region or by a language or even could be by gender have a humongous say in the electoral prospects. Getting the idea? Say for example, farmers pressure group, when we talk about, they're a very strong pressure group. They can actually decide the fate of an election, be it at the state level or be at the national level. Clear? So there it matters. Whereas tribals have never been known to be what? A pressure group. Because ultimately we don't find what? Ballot boxes in the forest. If the tribal people have to vote, they will have to come out of the forest and vote. That is if they are aware that there is an election. If they know that there is an MP, there is an MLA, there is a prime minister, there is a chief minister. Otherwise, for most of the tribals, it is what? Their tribal chief is their be all and end all. So why will they actually depend on an MLA or an MP or a CM or a PM? Getting the picture? And because they are nowhere there in the prospect of an election win or an election defeat, they are always taken for granted. Clear, people? Moving on. Lack of democratic values. Like I told you, when we talk about the preamble, social equality, political rights, economic rights, liberty, equality, fraternity, all these things we talk about. Justice, social justice, economic justice, political justice, all these things we talk about. But when it comes to tribals, to what extent have we given them their democratic rights? To what extent have we listened to them and asked them what do they want? So democratic values itself, if you see, we have what? Denied it to them by taking them for granted. Then restriction on civil liberties. So it is their liberty to go to the forest and collect a forest produce. It is their liberty to go to the forest and do what? Do shifting cultivation or June cultivation. But in the name of development, or maybe in the name of a new arised sense of environmental protection, what ends up happening here? You are creating new rules and laws which the tribal people are not able to make head or tail of. Once again, what does it lead to? Alienation. Encroachment on fundamental rights. So their way of life. Article 21, we talk about what? Right to life. Their way of life is something which we should guarantee them. We talk about what? Right to freedom of speech and expression. Right to freedom of movement. But when it comes to right to freedom of movement, we are telling the tribals not to go there, not to go here, not to come here. What is the end result? We are violating their fundamental rights. We are violating their way of life in the name of development or in the name of so-called better lifestyle. We will be able to give it to the tribals by bringing them to the mainstream society, by giving them education, giving them good health facilities, etc. But is it that what the tribals are craving for? Real question is, what does the tribals want? What is it that they desire? Nobody is bothering and nobody wants to ask that question. Clear? Moving on. So after political issues, next in line is governance deficit. Under governance deficit, what we see is poor governance. Absolutely true. Like I told you, if you are not a very big pressure group, then you are going to be neglected. At least in India, you're going to be neglected. History has taught us that same lesson only, because if you don't have a say, or if you don't exercise your political rights, if you don't mobilize your political rights, then you will end up getting ignored. And that is what has exactly happened with the case of tribals. Tribal desires, tribal wants have been ignored for the mainstream society who decides the fate of election. Creation of own order due to lack of governance. So when they know, or rather they don't know, that an MP or an MLA is there, that there is a functioning police system, a thriving judiciary, a thriving executive, a legislature, etc., when they are not aware of it, because nobody has bothered ever to bring the tribals to the mainstream judiciary, legislature, executive, etc., what will be the end result? They end up creating their own system in which they believe in, according to which maybe even taking the life of a non-tribal will be considered good or okay within the tribal community. Why? Because that person has threatened our culture, so I killed him. In the tribal community, they are like, yeah, it is fine. It is absolutely fine. You killed him. It is okay. But what if the person who died was a CRPF Jawan or the gunman of an IAS officer like you? Then, as per the laws of this country, we will have to arrest the tribal or the tribals who were involved in that action, and we'll have to prosecute them. We'll have to give them punishment, maybe even severe punishment if the crime was committed in totally cold blood and there is ample amount of evidence to show to what extent the whole act was committed in a barbaric fashion. But once again, will the tribal people understand the system what we are having? Will they be in a position to appreciate it? Or will it lead to further disillusionment? $1 million question is that. Management and corruption in the government schemes, which I already told you, out of every 1 rupee, 85 paise is siphoned off. Poor implementation of special laws. So these days, yes, we do find a change. The change is that special laws are made exclusively to deal with the governance of the tribals. But ultimately, who are the people who are supposed to be implementing these laws? Government officials. And if the government officials themselves are corrupt, or if the government officials show a complete apathy, then what is the end result? The end result is going to be what? No trust in the government, and ultimately tribal people will take matters into their own hand. So now we are done with governance deficit. We move on to the last factor that is responsible for the spread of Naxalism, which is trijunction theory. Before I head on with explaining what is trijunction theory, let me tell you a story. Have you heard of Satyamangalam forest? So Satyamangalam forest many years ago was actually notorious for one reason and for one person, Veerappan. For more than 30 years, one man managed to evade or managed to keep the forces, the police forces, including the forest officials, on their toes. Of not just one state, but actually 3 states. Now, actually, everybody will wonder how come 3 state police force failed to catch one man? How is it possible? Even the CRPF also had tried their luck here, but even they couldn't execute it. So central agencies, state agencies, almost everybody repeatedly failed in nabbing just one man and his gang. The reason is the trijunction theory. Trijunction theory simply means Satyamangalam forest was actually spread over 3 states. A very small portion of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. That is how the forest was spread. And as far as Veerappan was concerned, who was very well versed with the entire geography of the forest, for him to escape from Tamil Nadu and go into Karnataka, or to escape from Karnataka and come and stay in parts, northern parts of Kerala, was actually not so difficult. It was something which he could do on a regular basis. Getting the idea? So this actually led to what? This actually led to headache for 3 state governments as well as the central government too. Because they couldn't capture him. Because this area, what you talk about, the trijunction, where this common element to all the 3 states is this forest. Under whose jurisdiction it is? Who will look after the affairs of that particular area? No clarity, no clue. So obviously, it became very difficult to nab him. So did he get nabbed? Did he get killed finally? Which was the police force or which team actually helped or rather nabbed Veerappan? Food for thought. Anyways, coming to our discussion here, trijunction theory. In trijunction theory, areas situated around trijunction of borders of 3 states have the problem of governance deficit. Because nobody has a clarity as to this region should belong to whom, as a result of which there will be lack of transport, communication and other infrastructural issues there. Just like I told you about Satyamangalam forest, there are many regions in our country where even during noon, at 12 p.m. noon, inside this trijunction area, it will be pitch black dark. pitch black darkness. That is what you will be witnessing. Why? Because that is how thick the leaves grow or the trees grow. Getting the idea? So this is the nature of terrain there, as a result of which nobody knows what happens there. It is basically what a no man's territory, a no man's land it is. But tribals, they stay together or huddle together there. And because of this, again, what is the issue? Governance does not reach them. And in the event, if they join Naxalism and if you want to capture them, it becomes very difficult, because the so-called officers who come, they are city bred. They are not the people from the local population. So to understand the forest alone, it will take them time. And by the time they learn about the forest, learn about the geography, make a map, chart out the terrain, the type of the soil, type of vegetation, the trees, etc., a good amount of time would have got wasted, plus a good amount of lives of soldiers or jawans or even IPS officers would have already been taken. Getting the picture? Moving on. They act as a safe haven for extremist activities, which I already told you, because getting to that particular area is not easy. Because you cannot simply drop by helicopter, because if you drop by helicopter, you don't know where to land your helicopter. It is thicket of trees and bushes. You don't know what wildlife is waiting you for there, what dangers are waiting you there in terms of flora or fauna. Clear? Moving on. Dandakaranya, tri-junction of Chhattisgarh, Odisha and AP, which is again a hotspot for what? Extremist activities, or rather safe haven for Naxals. Maoist activities in the Western Ghat region, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So once again, these parts are becoming notorious for what reason? Because of its seclusion. The geographic seclusion, the infrastructure seclusion, the governance seclusion, whatever is there, is being exploited by the Naxals, because whatever attack they want to plan against the government or the symbols of the government, they will plan and they will execute it, and then they will go and hide in these regions. Getting to those places is not at all easy, because obviously these places, they are notorious not only for what? Bad terrain or lack of connectivity. It is also equally worst condition is bad weather, rain. So when it starts raining, it becomes even more risky to actually venture out into these places. Getting the idea, people? So these were the 7 causes, or these are the 7 causes that have actually led to the proliferation of Naxal activities in the country. Clear? Clear so far? We have discussed 7 different types of causes that actually led to Naxalism or spread of Naxalism in the country. But automatically now a question should come in your mind. What do you mean by Naxalism? From where did this word arise? How did it evolve? So those questions should be lingering in your mind now, and that is exactly what we are going to do next.